Okay,
Okay.
Okay.
I'm admitting all.
Mm-hmm.
So Jill Ruba is not here yet, and she's right at the beginning. I guess
That's all right.
you would
I'll-
do her, Julie, if you have to.
Yes.
She told me she's joining in. Why is she
Mm.
not there? I don't know.
Yeah, sometimes internet problems exist.
Because I'd given her a wake-up call.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and start. It's 4:30. Hello, everyone. Oh, there's Judith. Oh, Judith is coming in. Hello, everyone who's here. We actually are gonna wait one more minute. One of our presenters is not here yet. However, if you will please mute, I will ask you that again in a moment, but thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. You are attending How Gender Equal Climate Action Works to End Poverty, the Zonta story. Welcome, everyone. My name is Julie Trone, and I am your host today. Before we begin, I'd like to cover some housekeeping. Please use the chat line to ask questions, make comments, and tell us where you are in the world today. We love to know where you are. Use welcoming and inclusive language when we have our discussions and in the chat. Avoid judgment, criticism, and hateful comments. Ask short, succinct questions. Use the raise your hand when the time is available to have everyone together in discussion, and answer questions or comments respectfully. We will use polls and breakout rooms during this presentation, and we very much welcome your contributions. If you will also please take off your video, turn it off, you'll still be able to see the presentation and hear it, but it helps us with bandwidth. We are here today to explore how gender equal climate action works to end poverty and share our Zonta story. It is saddening to know that by 2050, if we continue with business as usual, climate change will push up to 158 million more women and girls into poverty and lead 236 million more women into hunger. So what can we do? This is our journey for today. Following introductions, we will provide an overview of Zonta Says Now and describe some of the global challenges contributing to women's poverty. We will then explore some tools for a fairer world and discuss them in breakout rooms. Finally, we will summarize and close the session. Our team today is led by me in Colorado, USA. I will be working behind the scenes, hosting this session, monitoring the chat with some help, and setting up the breakout rooms. Our presenters consist of Zontians from a few countries. From the USA, we have Bobby Cardillo in Virginia, Angela Brokeman in Kentucky, and Connie Campbell in Washington State. So we've covered almost all of the time zones here. From India, we have Eric Alaviev in Mumbai, and from Germany, we have Karen Lang in Berlin, and from Bangladesh, we have Dilruba Ahmed. I'll hand over to Bobby to tell you more about Zonta International and why we are concerned about climate change.
Thanks, Julie. Founded in 1919, Zonta International is an international human rights organization committed to building a better world for women and girls. In short, our 25,000 members in over 60 countries say yes to gender equity, no to violence against women, and now to climate justice. Zonta International envisions a world in which women's rights are recognized as human rights, and every woman is able to achieve her full potential. In such a world, women have access to all resources and are represented in decision-making capacities on an equal basis with men. And in such a world, no woman lives in fear of violence. Zonta International holds general consultative status with the United Nations Economic and Social Council and participatory status with the Council of Europe. We use this train to show why Zonta Says Now to gender-based climate action. This train was built during the Industrial Revolution, a time when humans started to put more greenhouse gas emissions into the atmosphere, where they're accumulating, forming a blanket around the planet, and causing global heating and associated extreme weather events. Extreme droughts, floods, fires, and storms trigger social disruption, causing millions of people to lose their livelihoods and homes. This social disruption magnifies any existing inequality, including gender inequality. Zonta Says Now stops the train by advocating for governments to meet their obligations under the Paris Agreement and closing the gender gaps in education, health, economic opportunity, and safety. Climate change impacts women and girls of all ages in all countries. These are the women and girls who inspired Zonta to take action. In Sudan, Deborah, age 9, must walk farther each day looking for food, water, and wood in her drought-affected country, and there's no time for her to go to school, and she no longer dreams of being a teacher. In Mozambique, Ayan, age 11, is frightened as she's being sold into marriage. Her family lost everything in the floods, leaving them destitute and unable to care for her. In Canada, Judith, age 42, has the daughter Claire, age 7. Claire has severe asthma that is made worse by the wildfire smoke. Judith is losing income as she must stay home to care for Claire, and she worries that she may lose her casual job. In Australia, Maria, age 79, walks to the local library in order to find relief from the extreme heat, as she cannot afford air conditioning in her rented apartment. She has a heart condition and she worries about how she will financially, physically, and mentally survive the hot summer. While in Nigeria, Relia, age 33, saw her entire market wash away in the floods, taking away her livelihood. And she's worried now how she will feed her children. In Germany, Freya, age 51, was made homeless in the floods. She has lived in a temporary shelter for nearly 2 years, waiting for her home to be rebuilt. Zonta Says Now seeks climate justice for women and girls like Deborah, Ayan, Judith, Claire, Maria, Relia, and Freya. We want women to be able to prevent, prepare for, respond, and recover from the impacts of climate change on the same basis with men. We can do this by taking gender equal climate action locally, nationally, and internationally. And Karen will tell us more about how Zonta works to achieve climate justice.
Thank you, Bobby. Yes, Zonta's strategic plan states that Zonta will fully embrace climate justice as an area of focus, and we will further develop Zonta Says Now as the campaign for our activities to address climate justice at local, national, international levels. and of course as well as at national levels. The last edition of the International Sondian magazine describes climate justice as putting gender equity and human rights at the core of decision-making and action on climate change, as women and children in general are still more vulnerable to natural disasters. This is Zonta's focus on climate-related topics. Of course, Zonta is not an environmental organization, but as a global human rights organization for women and girls, we have an obligation to be part of the necessary change in the spirit of the Paris Agreement. We need to address the resistance and threats that the consequences of climate change are already posing to the few gains we have been able to make together in the fight for the human rights of women and girls. The article also refers to Zonta's statement on climate change. Zonta's statement on climate change contains many recommendations to achieve climate justice. We call on governments to meet their obligations under the Paris Agreement, educate girls and encourage them to take up STEM careers and be part of the global response to climate change. Involve more women in decision-making so we have gender balance in governing bodies. Enable equal economic opportunities by addressing gender gaps in childcare, elder care, pay, anything that is a barrier to women participating fully in the economy. And include women in disaster planning so their needs are met. The statement calls on all members to increase their own awareness of climate justice, advocate for gendered climate actions, support more women in decision-making on environmental sustainability, promote girls' education, climate literacy, and women in STEM, and advocate for policies that ensure women's full participation in the economy. So far, we have focused on disaster preparedness and on raising members' awareness of climate justice. Our next focus will be on enabling women's full participation in the economy. Over to Angela to tell us about our tools.
Thank you, Karen. Zonta Says Now is an international campaign. We have Zonta Says Now web pages where our knowledge is collected and stored. Our monthly intercontinental think tank is where we share our passion and learning and are inspired by our speakers from around the world. We use a 5-step framework for action, and we have virtual art gallery where Zontians can express how they feel about gender equality and climate justice through their artwork. We have developed many resources to help us implement the recommendation on the Statement of Climate Change. We have a fact sheet and action guides, as well as the Guide to Environmentally Responsible Air Travel. Recently, we have focused on disaster preparedness planning and have developed a series of leaflets to help Zontians prepare for disaster and advocate their communities and countries to have gender-responsive disaster plans. As mentioned, our next priority from the Statement on Climate Change is to enable women's full participation in the economy. This will be our focus starting in 1 July of 2024. Today, we'd like you to help us as we explore this topic. The statement recommends that governments ensure that climate adaptation and mitigation plans address the unique needs of women and are barriers to women's full participation in the economy, including childcare, elder care services, occupational segregation that sees many low-paying jobs in female-dominant industries, informal work, the gender pay gap, and legal and social restrictions. For these reasons, women are more likely to live in poverty, have more family commitments, be less mobile, and have fewer economic choices. But what does the future hold for a world and for women? Eric, will you please share with us?
Thank you, Angela. Let's look at some of the global challenges facing humanity and adding to poverty today. Humanity is facing many global challenges. As Jane Goodall puts in, everything is connected and everyone can make a difference. We know the science, yet greenhouse gas emissions continue to rise. Global temperatures are rising, and last year was at the world's warmest year on record. The Paris Agreement recommends keeping global temperatures below 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, and we are in a race against time. Our global population has been growing, as has our gross domestic product. We are using natural resources at an alarming rate to feed our consumerism. The Earth Overshoot Day marks the date when humanity's demand for ecological resources and services in a given year exceeds what the Earth can generate in last year. Last year, the Earth Overshot Day was 2nd August. You can see in this graph what the Earth Overshot Day would be if the world population lived like a particular country. For example, if the world lived like the US, Earth Overshoot Day would be 13th March. If we all lived like people in Indonesia, Earth Overshoot Day would be 3rd December. And if we consumed as much as people in India, we would not overshoot. That is why India is not on the list of overshoot countries. We are also living at a time when a small group of people is owing more and more of the wealth of the globe. 10% of the world's population owns over 3/4 of the total wealth, takes over half of the global income, and accounts for nearly half of global carbon emission. Yet, the bottom 50% owns 2% of global wealth, takes 8% of global income, and accounts for just 12% of global carbon emissions. Is this fair? This map shows the state of global insecurity using the Global Peace Index. Countries in red and orange are less peaceful than those in green. In 2023, around 116 million people worldwide were forced to flee their homes due to conflict, persecution, or human rights violations. Globally, 10% of the world lives on less than $2 a day. That's just over 700 million people. Yet, in 2019, conflict and violence cost the world $14 trillion, equivalent to $5 a day for everyone on the planet. Is ending war one way of ending poverty? I'll now hand over to Connie.
Thanks, Eric. So how does climate change contribute to women's poverty? According to this Oxfam report, 10 billionaires own more than 200 million African women combined. There are 124 female billionaires among the top 1,000 billionaires. The growth in formal work particularly for women, is outpacing formal work. This means more workers are vulnerable to low pay and poor conditions. Food is essential for life, yet almost a tenth of the global population was affected by hunger in 2021, with food insecurity higher among women than men. Around 60% of those who go hungry are women and girls. The latest snapshot on the Sustainable Development Goals by UN Women shows that there is no way we will achieve them by 2030. Progress on ending poverty is too slow. 1 in 4 women and girls are expected to be food insecure by 2030. Sustainable Development Goal number 5 is all about gender equality, and none of the 17 goal indicators have been met. The number of women and girls living with water stress will nearly double by 2050. Climate change may push another 158 million women and girls into poverty by 2050. The number of women and girls living in conflict-affected areas has doubled since 2017. On the plus side, if we could achieve universal electricity access, we could reduce the number of women and girls living in poverty by 185 million by 2050. Climate change reduces women's access to natural resources and impacts women's livelihood, especially in agriculture, where women make up the majority of workers in many regions. Droughts, floods, and erratic rainfall reduce crop yields and food security, forcing women to work harder and longer to provide for their families. Girls may have to drop out of school to help their mothers or get married early if the family cannot afford to keep them. In developing countries, 43% of small-scale farmers are women, and they make up 2/3 of all livestock keepers. Women are less likely to have other sources of income, making them very vulnerable to poverty when a crop is lost. Climate change increases women's workload and unpaid care responsibilities. Globally, women perform 3/4 of the unpaid care work, 3 times more than men. It is the women who mainly care for the young, old, and the sick. When homes are destroyed, food supplies cut, and disease is rife, it is women who bear the brunt of caring for the family. Sadly, unpaid work is not recognized when calculating gross domestic product, so it is not valued. Climate change increases the risks of gender-based violence, displacement, and human trafficking, especially in conflict-affected and fragile settings. Women and girls are more vulnerable to these threats due to their lower social status, lack of mobility, and limited access to information and protection. Climate change also exacerbates existing inequalities and discrimination that fuel violence against women and girls. Studies have shown that a 1 degree Celsius rise in average temperature is associated with a 6% rise in violence against women. And the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN points out that in some countries, an estimated 1 degree Celsius increase in long-term average temperatures reduces the average income of female head of households by 34% compared to that of male head of households. A 10% increase or decrease in rainfall was associated with a 1% rise in child marriage. When crops fail, families sell their daughters to feed other family members. 1 in 5 displaced and refugee women have experienced sexual violence. Climate change affects women's health and well-being. Lack of water for washing or polluted water for drinking adds to the disease burden. Women and girls are often the last to eat in a household, and mothers often go without food so that their children may eat. Extreme heat has been associated with preterm births. During a climate disaster, health services are disrupted. Treatment may not be accessible, and there may be more unplanned pregnancies. Climate change limits women's opportunities for education, employment, health, and empowerment, and disasters disrupt services, schools, and jobs. Women face multiple barriers to full economic empowerment, and any disaster compounds the problem. The numbers truly do say it all. The global gender pay gap is around 20%. 130 million girls miss out on school. 48% of women have access to the internet compared to 58% of men. Only 12.8% of agricultural landholders are women, and only 65% of women have a bank account. We have to do better. Now I will hand it over to Julie.
Thank you, Connie. A lot of statistics there. I appreciate all the information you provided us. And now that you've heard so much, we're going to run a poll. We were going to do 2 polls. Here's the first one. In the first poll, we ask you, which of these issues do you think is the highest priority for women in your region? And in the second poll, we are going to ask you for your next priority. Bobby's going to monitor our chat line. I'm going to run the polls. So think about 1 through 10 and decide what you have, and I'll go ahead and start the poll. So I'm going to stop the share and start the poll. Give me a minute while you're thinking. All right, go ahead and put in your answer. Right, looks like everyone has answered. We'll wait a few more seconds. And I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results. So everyone should see what is the highest percentage. So it looks like incomes and work was the most chosen for different regions. Then we go to food, water, energy. Now those are lumped together because we only could have 10 choices, but actually in a little while you'll learn how they are separate. Health is 15% tied with food, water, energy, and then social equity is also tied. Then we have housing and education tied next, peace and justice, as you can see, and gender equality right above peace and justice. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to stop sharing this. And we will go back to do our second poll. Hold on a second. All right, everyone. Now let's see what the second highest priority is. I'm going to go ahead and stop the share. It's the same group of answers. You will see why in a little bit, why we are doing it this way. Here we go. Okay, you can go ahead and put in your answers for the next highest priority for women in your region. We'll have a couple people to answer. Okay. All right, almost everyone has participated. Let's see what the poll results show us. As you can see, let's see, it looks like incomes and work are second highest priority for many of you, and education and health. Those are our top three. Gender equality is in there. Housing, social equity. So as you can see there, I'm going to stop sharing and go back to the presentation. But as you can see, so many of us have the same issues. So thank you for participating in our polls. Sarah Hendricks from the UN Women summed up the current situation very well. She said, climate change is creating a downward spiral for women and girls. We need to transform economies away from extraction and pollution and integrate women's rights into all aspects of climate policy and financing. I'm now going to throw it to Karen to tell us about 3 reports that can help us do this and understand it more clearly.
Thank you, Julie. Yes, the first report looks at women as financial customers. Reaching Financial Equality for Women was co-authored by United Nations Women, and it points out that in 2022, only 14 countries out of 190 have gendered equality under the law for vital financial and economic indicators. They point out that many women cannot access formal identification, open a bank account, own property, develop a credit history, save, build assets, secure a loan, open or expand a business, or buy a mobile phone to send and receive money. They also describe how women are more vulnerable to economic impacts of climate change. More women live in lower income communities and work in highly vulnerable sectors, such as agriculture. They may have limited household decision-making power because of restrictive social norms and legal barriers. This report suggests 10 actions to accelerate women's economic empowerment, including digitizing payments, outlawing discrimination against women, ensuring universal access to identification, and ending the gender gap in mobile phone ownership. It also recommends hiring more women in banks and collecting more sex disaggregated data. The second report, called Gender Finance, is from the Financial Centers for Sustainability Network. It looks at how financial services are provided to women and includes a gender finance charter based on 10 principles. The charter aims to build a more gender-inclusive financial ecosystem that incorporates gender considerations into all aspects of business. This aims to include women in decision-making and meet their needs in all stages of the business, from investments to operations, strategies and management, products, services, and customer engagement. The third report, called Feminist Climate Justice, shows us how economics is part of a bigger picture. It contains a framework for feminist climate justice with 4 intersecting and interdependent dimensions for action. These are to recognize women's rights, labor, and knowledge, redistribute economic resources, repair inequalities and historical injustices, and represent women's voices. The framework comes with a gender equality and climate policy scorecard to help countries monitor national gender inequalities. This focuses on representation, which looks at enabling women's voice, agency, and participation, and including women on an equal footing in decision-making. Recognition looks at reducing women's care burdens and addressing gender-based violence and discrimination. Redistribution looks at strengthening women's economic security by improving women's access to and control over economic resources. Policies must ask who benefits, who loses out, in what ways, where and how. Any policies must allow for our changing world. Over to you, Angela.
Thank you, Karen. Yes, technologies are rapidly advancing. How will they impact our future, the future of work for women? The next video we're going to watch is going to highlight some of these challenges.
The world of work is changing radically. Because of automation, up to 160 million women may need to change occupations. If they navigate these transitions successfully, women could find more productive, better paid work. If they don't, gender inequality in work could worsen. Job losses and gains due to automation could be broadly similar for men and women by 2030. 20% of women's jobs versus 21% of men's could be displaced. But women could gain 20% more jobs versus 19% for men. Patterns of impact could look very different for women and men. 40% of job losses by men could be in machine operating and craft work. 52% of job losses for women could be in clerical support and services. Many current jobs will change as people work alongside machines. More women than men are likely to experience partial automation at work. To make the necessary transitions, women will need more and different skills. In mature economies like Canada, the United Kingdom, and the United States, the only net job growth may be in jobs requiring a college or advanced degree. In emerging economies like India, many women working in subsistence agriculture with little education and low skills may find it hard to find work in other sectors that require both. In the age of automation, everyone needs to have 1. The right skills, 2. Be mobile and flexible, 3. Be tech savvy. Women have disadvantages on all 3. In many regions, especially in emerging economies, women lag behind men in educational attainment. Women tend to be less mobile than men. Technology gives women flexibility and new ways to make a living, but they have less access to technology than men and fewer skills to use it. Old challenges are added to new ones. Women can be successful in the automation era, but they will need concerted help and creative new solutions to help them thrive in the work of the future.
Given everything we have covered so far, how do we enable women's full participation in the economy today and in the future? How do we raise them out of poverty? So, Julie, would you put us in our breakout room so that we can have this discussion, please?
I sure will. Give me a moment and we'll get this going. All right, everyone should be going to a room. If you see joined on your screen, please join a room. Oh, no, that looks like only room 5. Let me see if I can change that.
Okay, it's not showing me any rooms or any activity on my side, Julie.
Yes, I am going to close it. So everybody's coming back and we are going to start over because
It didn't go as planned.
all right. Give me a second. Oops. I have to assign them manually. I don't know why this doesn't usually happen, but today it
Really?
does. So this is how it's going to work. Almost there, everyone.
That's unusual. You had to do a manual assignment.
Mm-hmm. It really is. Almost there. I might be moving people around too. Just give me, oh, we only have
Okay.
5. Okay, wait. I think we have a few more to assign. All right. Okay.
Not in the room.
You're not in the room, Bobby?
No, I got myself bumped out somehow.
All right. You know, it's. Oh, I don't know why you bumped out. I'm going to move you to room. I'm going to move you around.
Okay, I'll join room 3.
Oh. I'm going to move you back to room 2. There you go. Should work. Interesting.
I'm sorry, I must have hit something because I'm back again. Put me back in room 3.
Well, I need you in room 2 to monitor it.
Oh, okay, maybe that was it. You need me back in 2.
I'm going to have to put you in another room for a second. Don't do anything yet.
I won't. When I see join, I'll hit the button, right?
Yeah. Let me see what I can do. Yeah, I'm gonna give me a second to get you in room 2.
Right.
Okay, there you go. Now you should be able to join.
Okay.
Thank you, Bobby. many minutes has it been? I don't even know. 5:16. It's probably been like 4 minutes. What is it? 17. Yeah. Oh, shoot. There, I go. I don't know why my breakout room screwed up, but I'm not,
Did you drop those links like before the meeting started?
I dropped one link.
Before the meeting started?
Yeah.
No, you can drop it again, because remember, if you're not in the meeting. Like if you join after you drop it, you don't see the chats.
Mhm.
If you want to. Oh, it didn't work out, but it worked out. I see them available, I just didn't join.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
It's working. Well, it sounds good. The presenter don't sound good, the audio is really good, the video sounds good.
Thank you. Sorry. But I do appreciate you. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a lively discussion. Sorry about the slowness in my breakout rooms. Not sure really what happened, but we're going to expect that again in a little while where I assign the groups. I know two of our presenters were in one room, and I hope that turned out really well for you. Let's have some highlights for a few minutes and just go through what each room was talking about. So we're going to start with Angela Brokeman.
Thank you so much. We had a good conversation. We talked about the need to help young girls and women appreciate education and specifically the STEM aspects of education. We talked some about the distractors for young girls when the hormones kick in, and that, you know, we have to help them as well as their counterpart males figure out how to focus on what's important for the longevity and not just the short-term hormone rages they're experiencing. Women also need support in education and figuring out, you know, for many countries and many places, the funding, the availability of that education to them. We have to become much more active in the way we raise our voices, to include the non-paid work that we do and having recognition on this. We need to be able to work with men so they can appreciate what goes on, and we need to move forward in a worldview shift as to how we all fit together. You're on mute, Julie.
Doesn't
There you
that
go.
happen to all of us? Yeah, thank you, Angela. That's wonderful. Wonderful highlights. That sounds like a robust conversation. Let's go to Bobby next.
Okay, well, we had mostly folks from Canada and the United States, and we had Jutta from Germany who said it was middle of the night there. Anyway, we talked about the Equal Rights Amendment in the United States needing to be passed to really allow women to have full legal rights, which will help us with equal pay. It will help us with everything, and ultimately help get women out of poverty and equal jobs and so forth. Dee in Canada talked about her shock at women's healthcare and reproductive care as it's happening in the United States right now, that women have to have the ability to decide on when to have children in order to have full access to jobs and careers. And that Canada is better in that regard, but there's conservative provincial governments that have capped wages in the healthcare industry. So there's so many things to fight. I mentioned this is an opportunity to share that the USA Caucus is having a webinar on April 28th on women in leadership and trying to get women to run for office, because to get that seat at the table. So we're gonna have a panel that includes Zontians who actually have been elected to office, share their stories. So please think of joining that. But all of us should think about trying to get a seat at the table. We also talked about the work that we've been doing on child marriage in the United States as being a bright spot. You can make a difference. You can change laws. And we are doing that state by state. And then Denise talked about educational awareness. We have to make people aware that, particularly with our healthcare situation, reproductive healthcare situation in the United States, OBGYNs are leaving their practices, and women in her area have to travel very far distance to get care when they're pregnant. So we have to just share the awareness and educate people. And from that, we can make change.
Thank you, Bobby. That was wonderful. It's nice to hear. It's nice to hear your highlights about 2 countries, because that shows everyone that, you know, we are all connected in the issues that we face. Thank you. All right, I'm going to throw it to Karen next for highlights.
Yes, thank you. Lots of discussion points were very similar in our group, covering 4 continents like India, US, Canada, and Europe. No, 3. I exaggerated. 3 continents. Yes, of course, first we said that it is all about accepting and respecting women and women's labor and women's contribution to that. And that starts very early, and it starts as well in your private room and in your own house, but also in society. And yes, and then it's all about, of course, breaking the glass ceiling. Education is a very central, crucial thing to promote education for girls. And we see that lots of women are really very skilled and have got good examiners and high education, but we don't see them in a top level. So that has to be they have to be encouraged. And Sonia from Germany, for instance, suggested to start in school with the education on economy, so that children learn from early age on, and also women, girls, that how to go for salary, what you can earn for work, but also how the economy works. That was very interesting. And I had a very good news from Canada to end it. There are already a lot of men taking parental leave, and that this is becoming trendy. And we see that also in the young generation in I think of men in Germany, that fathers are more interested to really take part in children's care. And I think, yeah, that's a good thing. So yeah, that was the summary of our discussion on that.
Thank you, Karen. Wonderful. Now, Eric, were you and Dilruba together in a meeting? Oh, you can unmute.
It was me and Karen together.
You and Karen. Okay, do you want to add a few things to what Karen had to say?
I think she covered everything what we discussed.
Okay, thank you, Eric. And Dilruba, why don't you tell us what happened in your room? What were you talking about? You're on mute.
Muted.
Yeah.
We spoke about our experiences, and I related that how women are coming up in our societies and communities. What we needed exactly to do was to motivate them, to motivate their families to come out and go to work, because some of them have the skills, but what they lack is motivation and also self-confidence. So if we can work together and give them that incentive and that moral boost up that you can do it, I think, because you see, ours is a different society. We have religion play a major part. So women are thought to be taken, that they should remain in the home and take care of the children and not go out. But then there is a disparity among in the status of women. Some women have reached the political level, and now this time we've seen in our political participation, women have been given a ministership, state ministership, which is a moral booster for other women, that they can also participate in decision making in the political level also. So there are some good things coming up, and again there are also some disadvantages for women who have little or no education at all. So first thing, we have to concentrate on educating the women. Secondly, that boost up their morality, give them the incentive, tell them they can do it, and also some care must be given to their children at home. They must have some caregivers, otherwise they cannot go out to work, because they're left to take care of the children, especially younger ones, and of course those who are going to school. So we have a mixed kind of status for women who are educated, who are uneducated, and who are educated but are deprived of getting chances because of the social structure. So education, and if we can motivate them to make decisions, if we can give them more incentive, more career-oriented jobs, then I think we can bring them out of this poverty level.
Thank you, Dilruba. It sounds like a nice basket of things to focus on, because they all go hand in hand: motivation, incentivization, and
Yes.
education. So thank
Yes.
you. Sounds like it was a wonderful conversation. We are going
Thank
to
you.
Connie for last but not least for highlights. Thank you, Connie. Thank you,
Great.
Dilruba.
So we had two women from Canada and one from Uganda and one from the UK. So it was a nice mix. Yeah, our participants from Canada talked about that not all women in the labor force necessarily want to or need universities, and that some of them may want to go the trade school route, but there is a need to change men's attitudes towards having women in trades. Grace from Newfoundland also talked about scholarships being given to women in the trades, but even beyond those scholarships, some may need help in actually getting jobs. Joan from Uganda shared some kind of eye-opening things in terms of what it's like in her country for women. Women are very much second-class citizens. Much of their labor is unpaid. Much of what they do is forced duty, and they are very much unappreciated. She suggested a solution more about advocating for men to work with women in what they do, so that they'll have a better appreciation for what women do and maybe value them more. Gabriella, who is from the UK, works in public health, particularly with women that come from other countries. She advocates a lot for equal rights, especially coming from other countries, and tries to get basic health care, and deals with some language barriers. Very much advocates for empowering the next generation for social equity as well as education, and supports trying to get education for these people in that country. I would say education was a theme in our group, as well as the whole equalizing of women in Uganda. Sometimes we don't realize how good we have it compared to some other countries.
Mhm. Thank you, Connie. Wow, the highlights were powerful today. And there was a thread of education all the way through. I see Gabriella has her hand raised. Gabriella, do you want to say something real quick?
No, actually, Julie, I was just clapping. Thank you. Thank you, Corny, for summarizing so well. No, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. We are going to start sharing our screen again, and I'm throwing it to Angela, I believe.
And while you're moving this back to the screen, we did have a member from Scandinavia, and she also spoke to the fact that men lose money if they don't take maternity leave during that bonding period with a new child at the home. So there are countries that are moving in the proper direction. So thank you all for your participation and giving all this fantastic feedback to us. At this point, I'm now going to hand it over to Bobby to show us how many ways the progress that we can make can be measured.
Thanks, Angela. So, are we trying to work in a broken economic system?
Yes.
Economist Peter Drucker famously said, "You can't improve what you don't measure." But are we measuring what matters? Most countries measure their economic progress using the gross domestic product. GDP was developed in the US in the 1920s to track the country's economy after the Great Depression. And it was soon adopted by many other countries to track and compare their economic progress. So we have a little video that's going to explain how GDP is calculated and what are its limitations.
Hi, I'm Willa, and I work here at the IMF. What is GDP, or Gross Domestic Product, and why should you even care?
Can you see that okay?
GDP is all around us. It's cars, clothes, doctors, even. It's all part of GDP. Let me explain. Some people produce goods like cars or clothes. Others produce services or hairdressers. So if you add up the value of goods and services, you get gross domestic product. Or you can add up incomes. If you add up the income of all the United States in 1 year, you get US GDP. So a higher GDP means everyone's doing great, right? Not always. You see, GDP doesn't measure, for example, how fairly things are being distributed. Some people may be getting all of this income, or how much the environment is being damaged. A lot of cars may a lot of pollution. In fact, GDP doesn't even include some very important services, like childcare. If a babysitter looks after your younger brother for the day, they get an income, they're providing a service. But if your mom does the same exact thing and looks after your younger brother, she doesn't get an income, so it's not included in GDP. So GDP is failing to measure a very important service. But GDP is a good overall indication of how much an economy produces every year. So that's GDP. It's all around us, and it's very good to know.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Okay. Just going to point out that in following along with that, Raisa Frazier has also commented in our chat that GDP does not include the division of labor within the household, which it hinted at, but it didn't really say that. So thank you for sharing that. So given the limitations of GDP, there has been a global conversation about creating new economies of well-being. And this concept is explained in this short video.
We often think of the economy as a straight line. We work hard to produce a lot so we can consume more, increase our gains, and spend it all again. But where does this take us? Our society and our planet? What if the economy was not a straight line, but more like a web, like a beautiful spider web, without the spider, of course, with different lines representing values such as innovation, education, equality, health, that come together to make like an economy of well-being. That's the word. Must remember it. The economy of well-being. It's based on the simple idea that our well-being makes our economy grow, and the other way around. In this economy, success is not only measured in terms of productivity and gains, but also in terms of happiness, physical and mental health of citizens, sustainability. So, we invest in people's well-being, and they are healthier, more innovative and productive, and they work and pay taxes without feeling too bad about it, because the money they pay is used to improve their well-being. And work is not the only thing. People enjoy their work, of course, but they also have time for friends and family. Men and women are more equal, and you don't need to come from a rich family to get into university or to become a famous scientist. And we're not destroying our planet, because we finally realize that it's the only one we have. So we're taking care of it. Sounds great, doesn't it? But how do we come to this economy? I'm not sure I have the answer. Maybe we just need to start thinking differently. So let's erase the straight line and look beyond the market, beyond averages, beyond the here and now, and into the future. Let's start building an economy of well-being. The end.
I'm going to mention we have another comment in the chat that I think goes along with this, that from Lisa Burton, that a system such as GDP that encourages inequities is not the measure we need to go with. So at this, I'm going to turn it over to Angela, and she's going to tell us more about well-being.
Thank you, Bobby. Over the years, there have been many measures created that go beyond GDP. For example, the UNDP created the Human Development Index that looked at the welfare of people. It focused on a long and healthy life, knowledge, and a decent standard of living. It did not consider environmental sustainability or inequality. And then there is the Happy Planet Index. What a lovely title. This multiplies a country's well-being by its population's life expectancy and divides it by their economical footprint. The main problem with this index is that all the data from these equations come from survey data that may be incomplete and not represent the entire country. The fourth king of Bhutan stated that gross national happiness is more important than GDP. In Bhutan, the Gross National Happiness Index survey, a representative sample of the population, and measures across 9 domains using 33 indicators. The GNH Index identifies 4 groups of people: unhappy, narrowly happy, extensively happy, and deeply happy. The analysis explores the happiness people enjoy already, and then focuses on how policies can increase happiness and sufficiency among the unhappy and narrowly happy people. Other systems look at a variety of dimensions. For example, the Boston Consulting Group Sustainable Economic Development Assessment, called SEDA, SEDA, focuses on 10 economic, investment, and sustainability indicators. The Genuine Progress Indicator expands this theme and has 26 economic, environmental, and social indicators. You can see on the wheel that some indicators are positive and others are negative. The total indicator is the sum of the total wheel. This is a useful tool for measuring progress against time in one country, but it is not so useful for directly comparing countries, as every country measures the indicators differently. And that is exactly what we saw when we did our 2 polls. that we see things differently from the primary and secondary focus. Of course, the UN Sustainable Development Goals are perhaps the most comprehensive of measures. They consist of 17 goals and 169 targets. Many indicators lack established methodologies or standards, and there are gaps in the data, making it very difficult to measure and monitor the goals effectively. Is there a system that would better prepare us for our rapidly changing world? I'll now hand it over to Karen.
Thank you so much, Angela. And today we'd like to introduce donut economics to demonstrate how, if we measure what matters, we could create a more sustainable world. Kate Raworth is a United Kingdom economist teaching at Oxford University. And in this short video, she introduces the donut framework.
So a few years ago, I tried to draw a picture because I love drawing pictures. I tried to draw a picture of the world that we want to live in. And it, silly though it sounds, it came out looking like a donut, American one with a hole in the middle. So imagine a donut, there's the outside and then there's the inside and there's that hole in the middle. In the hole in the middle, that's a space of deprivation, a space of shortfall where people don't have the resources to meet the essentials of life, like they don't have enough food or education, they don't have access to electricity, enough income, they don't have decent housing. So it's a space of shortfall, and we want to get people out of that hole in the middle into the donut. But we want to do that for the whole world, making sure that we also don't go beyond the donut's outer crust, because that's a space of ecological overshoot, where humanity puts more pressure on the planet than the planet can take, and we start causing climate change or massive loss of biodiversity. We start creating a hole in the ozone layer or polluting Earth with chemicals that we add to it. So we need to both get people out of deprivation and poverty, but also protect Earth and protect these fundamental life-supporting systems that keep us alive. Those are the two sides of human well-being, the inside and the outside of the donut. And the 21st century challenge is a unique one. It's to get everybody out of poverty while coming back in at the same time. That's never been taken on before. And that's partly why we need to rewrite economics, because it's a completely new way of looking at what human well-being is.
Yes, and this diagram shows how a city or a country can measure its ecological and social progress. The outer boundaries show the ecological ceiling and measures 9 planetary boundaries. The hole in the middle shows how well people's needs are met using 12 social boundaries, including gender equality. The red segments show how much the system is broken. The donut can be used to compare the performance of different countries visually. For example, Kenya's environmental footprint is small, as it has no red segments extending from the outside of the donut. However, it is not socially just, as there is a lot of red in the donut hole. Costa Rica is the closest to meeting the needs of all people within the means of the living planet. There are very small extensions in the planetary boundaries and minimal red in the center. Denmark and the United States show how many countries in the global north exceed their ecological ceiling, but they meet the needs of their people on most parameters. Most parameters, of course, we have to be cautious with this. In the US, it looks like the social foundation is good, but there are major issues, of course, with gender equality, social equity, and health. Gender equality is going backwards in some areas. Both of our polls reflected the inner circle of donut economics. Some cities have used community forums to develop their own donuts. For example, in Melbourne, Australia, they adapted the social parameters to meet their local needs, and the resulting donut serves as a powerful new compass for the city. They changed networks to access and information and added mobility and art and culture. They also included a ring to remind everyone about the importance of healing and reconnecting to the nature and to each other. So how can we use the donut for the benefit of humankind? The Club of Rome is a non-profit organization of diverse thought leaders from around the world. And they ask us the following questions. Can we, meaning all individuals and all people in society, join forces to overcome the challenges of this century together? Can we, with courage and conviction, make a collective leap forward in human development? Can we overcome divisions, neo-colonial and financial exploitation, historical injustices, and deep mistrust between nations to solve the emergency in the long term? And finally, can we achieve systemic change in decades, not centuries? I now hand it over to Eric.
Thanks, Karen. Moving on further, the Club of Rome put the answers to these questions in the book, Earth for All, a survival guide for humanity. They propose two scenarios, business as usual and a giant leap. The giant leap scenario asks what is possible to achieve in one generation. This short video captures what Earth is all about.
The world has never been so rich, but we're still susceptible to shocks and crises. Can we build more resilient societies? Not utopian, but functioning and fair. This is the story of Earth for All. We assembled a group of economic thinkers and scientists and developed a computer model to test their big ideas. We then asked, what's possible in one generation? If we carry on as normal, population and material footprints continue to grow, particularly due to overconsumption in rich countries. The gap between the richest and everyone else widens. Social tensions worsen. Climate change impacts become ever worse. But what if the world takes a giant leap now, with 5 extraordinary turnarounds? In this possible and plausible future, all people can live a good life within safer planetary boundaries. We avoid the worst climate impacts. Poverty ends earlier. Population peaks lower. Well-being rises. Social tensions fall. Nature starts to heal. Incredibly, the investment needed is only 2 to 4% of global income. But we do need massive investments now, driven by governments on a clear mission to enact the turnarounds. Another big idea is a citizens fund for each country, where companies pay to use our commons, the wealthiest contribute fairly, and the funds are distributed to all citizens equally. But rebooting economies won't happen on its own. We need a global movement, kicked off with worldwide citizens' assemblies. This is Earth for All. How the story ends is up to you. Join earthforall.life.
Okay. Kate Raworth is also a member of the Club of Rome and a supporter of the 5 critical turnarounds suggested in Earth for All. She says, it is time to shift from the age of endless growth to an age of thriving in balance. Earth for All uses the 9 planetary boundaries and the 12 social boundaries identified in the donut economics. The giant leap scenario is where societies adapt unprecedented and immediate action across 5 interconnected turnarounds. These are ending poverty, addressing gross inequality, empowering women, transforming the food system, and transitioning to clean energy. To help end poverty, the Club of Rome suggests that we must rethink and restructure international financial policy to encourage sustainable, thriving business. We need, among other things, a tax on large fortunes, the closing of tax loopholes, a shift from the income taxation to taxation of accumulated wealth, and a shift from taxing labor to taxing the consumption of resources. And last but not the least, fairer access to credit financing and debt relief for low-income countries. And we need to also have a new economic operating system. We need to move away from the social welfare towards an unconditional basic income and a citizen's return. This return is fed by citizen funds into which companies and corporations pay for using the commons. For example, in Alaska, oil companies have been paying into the Alaska Permanent Fund for many years. Every year, each inhabitant receives money from this fund. In 2021, it was around $1,200 per person for a family of 4. That's $4,800 to invest wisely in things like their children's education. Finally, a new currency model would charge for holding money, making it more attractive to invest in sustainable and ecological meaningful commons and goods. This video marches us through each of the 5 transformations. Can we have the video, please? Fine. Here are the turnarounds in case you missed them with the marching music. When ending poverty, the goal is that low-income countries will grow their GDP at 5% a year until it is equivalent to more than 15,000 USD per person. To do this, debt is cancelled. there are new models for growth and trade is regionalized. To address gross inequality, the goal is for the wealthiest, 10% in the world, to take less than 40% of national incomes. This is achieved through progressive taxation, trade reunionization, and having a universal basic dividend, so everyone gets a basic wage. Empowerment is all about achieving gender equity and stabilizing the global population to less than 9 billion by 2050. Transforming food systems aims to have healthy diets for all, protect the soil and ecosystem, not expand agricultural land and reduce food waste. This is achieved by cutting food waste, promoting regenerative agriculture and soil health, and changing diets. Finally, the clean energy transition aims to have greenhouse gas emissions every decade to reach net zero by 2050. This is achieved by cutting energy waste and consumption, electrifying everything, and having renewable energy with storage. Over to you, Bobby.
Thanks,
Thank
Eric.
you.
So we've seen some theories. So how do they work in practice? This video from the Wellbeing Economy Alliance describes what a well-being economy is, and it asks if we are serving the economy or if the economy is serving us.
Communities around the world are shifting towards a well-being economy. Economies touch every aspect of our lives. Whenever we create and exchange, when we care for or teach one another, when we rest, give, or receive, economies are present. But what is an economy really for? Is it serving us or are we serving it?
I think an economy should serve the mothers, the children, the teachers, the doctors, of all the people that live in it.
It's thriving. It's meeting the needs of all people within the means of the living planet.
To be good stewards of the planet, to be good stewards for one another. That's what an economy should be.
What we're being asked to do essentially is to put aside our assumptions about how the world worked in the past.
So I think the economy needs to shift toward promoting flourishing of life in all its forms, rather than just promoting a system of monetary exchange.
It's about looking after our planet, our home, and how we manage as a global tribe.
Can't just have one set of people kind of imposing those needs on the rest of society. So you have to include everybody in that dialogue about what kind of economy we want.
In order for people to be truly liberated, for people to be truly free, they must have control of their economic futures. This is 1,000 hands, 1,000 seeds blooming.
We held a national conversation with the citizens of Wales, and we posed the question, what's the Wales you want to leave behind to your children and your grandchildren and future generations to come?
We began with Amsterdam, and other cities and towns and nations and islands started picking up these concepts too, from Barbados to Barcelona, from Copenhagen to Cali, Colombia.
We're working with a community in Pomona, California to help co-create a vision for well-being and then move from that vision toward a strategy.
If you ever think that you're too small to make a difference, okay, Wales is a tiny nation of just over 3 million people, and yet we have this world-leading legislation.
Just basically, how do you work with your neighbor? How do you work with your friend, your enemies? How do you relate with them in a way that their life, the way they live their day-to-day life is thriving?
So this is possible, it is happening now, and we need all of us to come together as a one voice to demand for change.
That's what the next 5 years are about, and not giving up hope, not giving up the fight, not stopping that action that will eventually lead to a better world.
It's happening. Thousands of people and organizations around the world are working towards a well-being economy. Join us.
So the Wellbeing Economy Alliance, also known as We All, is a global collaboration of over 400 organizations, alliances, movements, and thousands of individuals. working to transform the economic system to serve the people and the planet. WEAL has members from over 50 countries with local hubs in Scotland, New Zealand, Iceland, Wales, Finland, Canada, Australia, and more. They produce resources to implement the principles of donut economics. There is also the well-being economy of governments, known as WeGo. This was launched in 2018 at the OECD World Forum by 3 female leaders. First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon. Prime Minister of Iceland, Katrin Jakobsdottir, and Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern. Today, WeGo also includes Finland, Wales, and Canada. Scotland provides the Secretariat. Governments create economic policy labs so that officials from governments can share their experience and their expertise, and collaboration is the name of the game. Angela will now show you a couple of well-being economies. Over to you, Angela. You're muted.
There we go. Sorry. Thank you, Bobby. New Zealand's well-being approach is based around this living standard framework. It covers people, place, and time in generations. It identifies 4 capitals that generate well-being now and into the future. These are natural, human, social, and financial and physical. The framework contains 12 domains of current well-being, which look very similar to those that were in the middle of the donut hole. The New Zealand government identified 4 national priorities: the cost of living, delivering health, education and housing, recovering and resilience, and fiscal sustainability. Government departments must collaborate to address the priorities, and the gender lens must be applied to each priority. All data is transparent and can be accessed through the Living Standard Framework dashboard, so anyone can check the progress. In 2007, Scotland developed the National Performance Framework, which was last updated in 2018. Its purpose is to create a more successful country with opportunities for all of Scotland to flourish through increased well-being and sustainable and inclusive economic growth. The framework's value statement reads, "We are a society which treats all our people with kindness, dignity, and compassion, respect the rule of law, and acts in an open and transparent way." Imagine if the whole world could operate like this. The National Performance Framework has 11 major outcomes with 81 improvement measures. Again, data is publicly accessible so people can see how Scotland is performing against the framework. In our New Zealand case, it was mentioned that they looked at each priority through the gender lens. One tool to do this is the Gender Impact Assessment. The GIA can be used to assess the impacts on women when undertaking public procurement, public consultation, service delivery management, and when preparing budgets. However, you need gender deaggregated data to do this. So a first priority is to collect gendered data. The OECD has a useful toolkit for preparing a GIA and a host of other tools to help embed gender-sensitive practices in government, parliament, the judiciary, and public administration. We will pause here for a minute so you can take a so you can close your eyes and imagine a world of peacemakers and healers.
Thank you, Angela. I hope you envisioned something beautiful for the future of our planet and each other, our societies. We are going to move into another discussion. We're going to talk about what can you do to empower women and end poverty. Go to the next slide. So as you see on the slide, it has the elements of social injustice or social justice needs, we can call it. Then we have locally, nationally, internationally. But let's think about small actions that we can do today so that the discussion can be very robust. Sometimes it's hard to think very broadly. However, don't let that stop you if you have nationally and internationally thoughts. We can talk about that too. So I'm going to stop the share and go to our breakout rooms. So please bear with me. Here we go again. Looks like we have the same room, so I'm going to open them all again, and everyone's going into the same rooms. Welcome back, everyone. We are going to hear some of the highlights, starting with Angela again.
Hello, all. We talked about having a universal child care provided, which would help women be able to go to work. We also talked about having child care provided for many of the universities so that while the female is gathering and collecting new education, that their children are being cared for. Talked about bosses being lenient for those some days when you're in a pinch and being able to bring your child to work with you. Also talked about the critical need to make sure that the children are going to school. And the other one that was addressed was language barriers, how, a lot of times the language, you don't know what you're buying, what you're using, how to use it. So you leave it when in fact it would be useful, with English being the primary. And we talked about how in most of the US anyway, Spanish seems to be the secondary because you see a lot of Spanish, but if you're not one of those two languages, you're kind of stuck. So that's what we talked about.
Very good points all, Angela. Thank you. Bobby, you're next.
There we go. I'm sorry. Okay, well, we talked about a lot of things. Let's see. We started by talking about we need to teach our daughters to demand more and better, how to ask for more money, how to ask for the promotion. And even our youngest member that was in our group said that she never had any of that kind of training anywhere along the line. So we need to think about doing that. That's something Zonta, could look into helping with. We talked about, as consumers, we could watch where we spend our money and try to spend it on women-owned businesses and women's services, services provided by women rather than men, in order to support the growth and the success of women in enterprise. Hasna joined us from Bangladesh, and she shared that we need good leaders in politics, and we have to get women who care, particularly women who care about other women, into government. And that some NGOs are working on this in her country, but we need to be educating girls to take on leadership and include the lowest income girls in that, and that there are many in her country that need that push, that assistance. And then we got off onto how hard it is for women to be in politics because of just harassment, and maybe we need more women in the social media companies in order to change the rules that allow the badgering of women online. And for that, we need the buy-in from men. So how do we get buy-in from men? And then we talked about the need for legislation. Legislation can really change some of this. And we talked about supporting legislation at the local level. I talked about going down to support a bill in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and having a press conference along with other NGOs in order to highlight an unfair ruling about sexual assault. So you can do things locally with other organizations. And then Denise talked about what she did in the state of Michigan to end child marriage in that state, working with many other organizations for many years. But it's something that 15 Zonta clubs worked on together. And so Zontans can make a difference working on legislation. And so we decided it may be best to focus on the local level.
Thank you, Bobby. A long list of very important tactics that women can take. Thank you. Let's go on to Dilruba.
Yes, my group only, I forget her name, the Japanese lady spoke, and she spoke about women in politics. And actually there wasn't much participation. So, and I didn't speak because she was the only one there. But hearing all of you, I would like to add what Hasna has said, because we are in the same country and we share the same views. So women in politics must be helped by other women. Otherwise, it is not, possible for women to lend their voices when they are suppressed by men and women. So there is a quota in our country, and I think that we have to work harder to increase the quota and include more women in participation politics. Then, of course, I think that we have Zonta can start the slogan "He for She," because if the men are not taking care of some responsibilities of the house, then it becomes very difficult for the women to continue to work at home and work outside. And of course, I would have spoken on equal pay. Why is there always a disparity between payments? Because if it's the same caliber, same intelligence, same stamina, same sort of effort that you're putting into the job, but we have to fight for equity and equal pay when we are in the same status, when working in the same status. And of course, there should be creche for women to leave their children behind when they go to work. So that, like, in America and many places, you have daycare centers. But in our countries, we have daycare centers for the rich people, for the rich children. But for the grassroots level, there's no one to take care of. And they can't take their children to work because then they lose efficiency. So these are some things that I had in mind to share, but I couldn't because there was nobody. I didn't have much in my group, so I'm sharing with you. And of course, I ditto all the tip points that you people have put up. This is the only way that we can go much forward if we work together in cohesion and in unison and put all the suggestions that we get together and put in a framework and start working in our club levels, district levels, in our communities, so that we can better ourselves, better the conditions of the women, especially in countries like us with natural disasters hitting us so often. We are prone to natural disasters, so we must take action against these things and take, preventive measures also. Thank you.
Thank you, Dilruba. These are all, every one of them, such important points. And I know we can use our voice and make a difference. Last but not least, I'm going to throw it to Eric. Eric and Karen, our two presenters, work together, but last time Karen spoke. So let's hear from Eric this time. And he actually is part of He for She. So maybe you can throw a little note in there about that.
Yeah. We had speakers from Germany, from Canada. Uta stressed on basically education, and further on, the economy looks around. That's Karen put in. Example she gave up the Hamburg donut model. People to share their experiences about basic income strengthens women. Example she gave was of India, where the basic income, the women have invested wisely and they have sustained themselves. Further on, Karen wanted to further implore on having community funds, and these community funds should be received by the families. Renuka put in that she liked the donut model, especially on equality, environment, and equity, to stay with sustainable economic stories of women who have overcome barriers. And also, she said that policymakers need to create proper infrastructure. Also, Anita put in that you need to calculate what the average extra labor produces for average lifetime changes that makes an impact on the gross national product. And the basic income for women should be that the rich should be taxable, and whatever amount is acquired should be used for women from the lower strata of society. To add further, in India, the legislation has given 33% of reservation for women, and self-help centers have come up where the government at the local level, at the grassroots level, funds women's small group organizations so they can make their own business, thrive their business. Like you have these companies called the Lijjat Papad, where you have those papadums, where the group of women, They make these and they sell. And a very good example I would like to share is the Amul milk factory.
Yes.
Where women at the grassroots level, they are given money, funds to purchase cows and cattle, and they are milked every morning. They are taken to a nodal center where it's checked, and then it goes to the main factory to make butter, cheese, ice cream, and so on. So these women are given a small amount to sustain themselves and their family, even if the men in the household don't work or they don't support them. So this is what was taken up.
Thank you, Eric. Wow, that's very impactful. So nice to hear about a government of a country making such inroads for women. Well, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I'm going to throw it to Karen.
Wait a minute, our group didn't share.
Oh, Connie, I wrote you down, but I didn't let you go. I am so sorry. You're next, Connie.
Okay, so we had quite the lively discussion. We talked about how women in leadership sometimes are harassed and get a lot of hate mail. And so that can be a stumbling block towards more women getting involved. We talked about the need for more people at the bottom level of services needing to be invited to the table. One of the folks said that there isn't a country around that doesn't have policies, but how do the policies actually help the common people? So the need to have that. And we even talked about the kinds of meetings that Zonta has. Here we are meeting for the CSW in New York City. Why not meet in a place that's in a place where you're dealing with more common people? How can we bring more people to the table? People from countrysides, indigenous people, all of those kinds of things. So we're all over the place, but we're wanting to actually not just have policies, but make them be helpful to people. And how do we hear from those people so that we can make them helpful for people?
Wonderful. We've learned so much today. Let's move into our summary. And with all of those discussion points for 2 discussions, I think all of us have probably our hearts filled and our minds filled to see what we can do in our own local area. Let's go to Karen for a summary. Karen.
Yes. Oh, what a journey. Thank you so much, Julia. What a journey we have been on today. I hope you all enjoyed it. And let's just remind ourselves of what we did. We started with a train journey and described Zonta International and why Zonta says now to gender equal climate action. We shared the statement on climate change that includes a recommendation to enable women's full participation in the economy. We then looked at the challenges facing humanity, showed how women are faring both economically and against the Sustainable Development Goals, and then explored how climate change contributes to women's poverty. We did 2 quick polls to see which issues you thought were the highest priority for women, and then showed some tools to improve women's financial inclusion and justice. We then discussed how we could enable women's full participation in the economy today and in the future to raise them out of poverty. Our next phase was to explore how economies can measure what matters. We gave a brief overview of GDP and a few ways that well-being can be measured. We introduced donut economics and the book Earth for All. This book applied donut economics and in its giant leap scenario identified 5 turnarounds to create a thriving, balanced planet. We then showed what a well-being economy looks like through examples from New Zealand and Scotland. And finally, we discussed how to address the barriers to women's full participation in the economy. What a journey. Your ideas and feedback from today will help us to develop our resources to reduce the barriers to women's full participation in the economy. And with this and a big thank you to all of you, I hand it over to Bobby.
Thank you so much, Karen. As Amelia Earhart, the famous pilot and former Zontian, said, the most difficult thing is the decision to act. The rest is mere tenacity. So I ask you, what action will you take first to end women's poverty? Having a fairer economic system will help to achieve climate justice for women and girls so that ultimately Deborah will be able to go back to school. Ian will not be sold into marriage. Judith can look after Claire without worrying about her job. Maria can afford to be cool in her own home. Relia's market will be flood resistant and she can support her family. And Freya can move into a permanent home. I'd like to thank all of today's presenters and all of you for participating in today's session. And we hope that we have challenged your thinking and inspired you to create an Earth for all. If you'd like to find out more about Zonta or would like to get in contact, please visit our website or email us at the address on the screen there. Thank you all so much. Good night.
Yeah, good night. And yes, one more thing. We have a toolkit provided for you, which contains all the sources we used. So that's in the chat. Julie, probably you can post it again, so for download. But we will have it also on our site, and you find it also in under NGO CSW in our schedule of the parallel event. Easy to download. So there you find everything, also the movies and stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Julie, I'm sorry I couldn't get in, so I missed my chance. Yeah, I was trying to, I called Eric that I just can't enter, so that then gradually I could do. Sorry for that.
That's okay, Dilruba. You know, we are from the world. We are here representing a lot of the world, and a lot of the world has trouble with internet, and things happen and life happens, and we are forgiving and loving and caring, and it's really
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that generous consideration. Thank you.
You're welcome. But you also did a great job with the two breakout sessions. So we needed you there, and you fulfilled such a beautiful position there, and that's great. The toolkit is a PDF you can click on. It should go to your browser. You can look at that and keep that. Hopefully the links are hot. But if the links don't work, you'll have to cut and paste. But that does show every document and video that we have had.
Yes, thank you. I will do that.
You're welcome. So thank you, everyone. I thank you for being here today. It was, I know, a long presentation, but it was so chocked full of important information to lead us down the path. Yes.
It was so interesting.
Yes. So the foundation, we were building a foundation of really how are we going to address all those issues we talked about, all those social justice issues inside the donut, and all of the climate issues outside the donut all come down to the foundation of economics. So we appreciate everyone listening and taking that in and processing that and seeing how does that work, maybe looking at some of the links that we provided to learn more. So thank you, everyone. I won't keep you any longer.
Thank you. Bye.
Appreciate all of you.
Thanks,
everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. You're welcome. Bye now.